Everyone. So show and tell. Um, Thanks for coming. First off, we've got Roger, who's the head of technology advisors in the standards assurance team. Cheers.
Much more build up, is it, Abisola? He is, isn't he? Yeah, so controls and stuff. Are you? Yeah, oh, good enough. You're not on yet.
There you go.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes taking you through some of who we are, what we are, why we do, and I think some of the more exciting stuff, the potential for what we are starting to do and can do more of in the future. Not to be confused with my slide deck of buses, which is not a hobby, but 391. Some of you may know that the controls team, the senior tech advisors in financial year 14-15 saved £391 million by exercising the controls. And I can't officially announce anything on the numbers that we've saved for this year, but there's a picture of another bus. What does that mean in reality? Well, over the past couple of years, the money that we've saved by looking at digital and tech spend control requests that come into us means that we could have funded, with that saved money, a number of schools, hospitals, arbitrary figures, but if you take it around £50 million for a fairly straightforward hospital, we could have built several of those and several secondary schools. So that's what we do. What do departments think of us for the way we do these marvelous things? Well, the reality is that they probably don't think too much of us. There's some comments that have come from a recent Transforming Together workshop. And that bit has been censored, obviously. But the message that we got back clearly was that we weren't always as fully engaged as we could be. And so what we'd like to do, we'd like to try and improve that. We'd like to try and improve this slide presentation as well. You can edit that bit out. So what are we trying to do? Traditionally, the spend controls team were senior tech advisors that would go out and look at a case when it had been through an internal department's embryonic process. It would be going through approvals processes. It would be stood up. It would be built to quite an advanced level. We would then inevitably go in, pick it apart, point out the bad things, and try and stop the bad behaviors, stop the bad choices of tech. That, as you might not be surprised to hear, was not always well received. What are we trying to do now? We're trying to move away from being perceived as a bunch of dodgy geezers and girls. We are not peddling bad stuff. Neither are we retrenching into aviation house, keeping calm and just carrying on doing the same old process. What we've got now is a standard assurance team with several superstars in it that are supported by colleagues from the wider GDS environment. Most specifically, I would call out the engagement that we've had with our technical architect friends, which has enabled us to actually come up with a much more holistic approach to dealing with departments. So not only are we looking to get in earlier and talk about things at inception, but we're offering a much more broad-based approach to that. Yes, we're trying to be helpful. And some of that, I believe, is starting to come across in the way that teams are starting to accept the invitations that we're sending out. So instead of myself or one of my colleagues just having that one-to-many relationship, we actually start to talk about the whole engagement process. There are things that we need to mandate. Some of that is around the spend controls process. Some of that is around service standards. But the idea is we talk about these things, we share, and we agree what's going to be happening. And some of the good feedback that has then started to produce. As I say, consultant architectural services that we're offering, that has really helped people shape and develop business cases that become much more productive. And ultimately, we're seeing less of the adversarial confrontation when we start to look at business cases much later on in the cycle. So that is briefly, very briefly, what we do, what we're aspiring to do. Anybody got any questions? Fantastic. Alice?
See if I can actually work this and not break it. Oh, no.
Not Alice, Trang, that's all right. So I'm just aware that we haven't talked about our alpha plans. So the last couple of show and tells, we've talked about our model. So I wanted to share with you what our plans are. Several weeks ago, we did an inception workshop with the team, and these are the objectives that we came up with. So top off, it's to validate that the proposed model is an effective assurance model. So that covers a lot of different things. So what is an effective assurance model? It's about assessors being able to understand, what the service is that they're, assessing. Are they able to give good recommendations, and are service teams finding those recommendations useful? Are they making any changes to those recommendations? And is it helping them build better services? The second part we want to have a look at is around being a more collaborative assurance experience. So we know that it can be quite confrontational as service teams come into a room and sit there for 4 hours. So what we want to do is try and make that more collaborative, work with service teams to let them know why they're not meeting the standards and how they could potentially meet those standards, what they can do to fix their service and build a better service for citizens. We also recognize that it's really important for us to be able to resource the assessors to support the model that we have. So in Alpha, we plan to put a plan together around how we could potentially address this challenge. So as part of what we're going to do once we kick off all the visits to the service team is we're going to sit down and look at how many service teams are there, how many assessors do we need, what do we need to get those assessors trained up to then be able to support the model. So this is something that we're going to plan in our Alpha. We're not going to test it out. It's just a plan. And the final part is around the impact of the cost and governance of the new model compared to the old model. So we realize that at the moment, it costs service teams a lot of time and resource to prepare for assessments. It costs, assessors time to kind of go and sit in the assessments to assess them. So how does the models reflect this, and what does the outcome of that look like? So for our Alpha, what we will be doing is validating our model against our user needs. And this is what we're doing. So we're going out to 4 service teams in 4 different departments, 1 in discovery, 1 in alpha, 1 in private beta, and 1 in public beta. So we're testing out all the different stages. We've currently planned 3 fortnightly visits. The first visit will be with a lead assessor. The second and third visit will have experts, assessors along, such as user research, data analysts, content, accessibility, if the team needs accessibility, assisted digital, if that's what the team needs. So we'll bring those experts along for the second and third visits. Each of these visits will be around an hour, so that gives the assessor time to have a chat to the team, see what they're doing, have a walk around, have a look at their boards, see a demo of their product, if that's what they're building. Okay, I'll just skip forward one. And then the assessor would then, after the session, would then help us fill out this spreadsheet here. So we've sort of come up with a spreadsheet that we thought might be helpful for the assessors to do. And what we're asking assessors to do is, after their visit, to just jot down some comments, observations around how the team is currently meeting the standards and any recommendations that they have. So it's just something that we'll do, and we'll evaluate whether this is the right method of doing it and whether service teams will find it useful. From our testing, this is the type of research we plan to do following our visits, so that we can kind of get some findings and understand what's going on with the service teams. So Yeah, so it's basically the recommendations and feedback, interviews with the service teams and the assessors, any ongoing feedback that we get just from casual conversations. And we're doing 2 retrospectives, one with the assessors that participate in the alpha, and the service teams that we've asked to come and visit them. And that's about it on our plan. Was there any questions on what we plan to do? Yes.
So are you imagining if this proves to be a successful model, rolling it out across government?
Yes. So to start, we'll look at rolling it out to service teams that require a GDS assessment. So those with 100,000 transaction and above.
Because it seems to me that there's like 2 very different types of assessments going on, the internal and the GDS one. And obviously, internal assessments have things that have a very, very small digital component that need to subscribe to the same standards. Those teams might have no digital knowledge and still struggle just as much as if they were coming for a GDS assessment. It seems unlikely they would be resourced in the same way just because of the need in terms of kind of greater governmental approach. How are you factoring that in?
So at the moment, we're looking at just, for our alpha, it's just really, is our continuous engagement helpful? Does it work? After that, we will then have a look at, the assessments that GDS run at the moment. So when we think about the challenge that we're going to have with just trying to get assessors and people to talk to service team, it's a really big challenge to start with. And then we would then work with the departments separately if they haven't already worked on something that is a little bit different to the current model, to see how that could suit their departments. So it's quite far down the track for us to kind of try and help departments revamp their own assessment process.
I guess I'd be the one coming in as an expert.
Yes.
Usually in an assessment, it takes an hour and a half to get your head around what the service is about.
Yeah.
It's like, and going in, seeing a demo, trying stuff, and learning about the service in an hour feels very ambitious.
Yeah, so this is part of the, part of the thing that we're trying to test. So we've only had the one visit, which Alice went to, so she's going to talk a little bit more about it later. But we're sort of just trying to work out, is that 1 hour enough? And if we're doing more than 1 hour, does the model still work? So instead of the service team coming in and seeing us, for 4 straight hours, we're kind of trying to spread that out over, the development of their product. We're seeing them a little bit more often than the 4 hours because we don't want the team to be spending days and days preparing for the assessment. So we're trying to actually work out to see if you do spend that 1 hour, once every fortnight, can you get a view of what they're doing and how they're doing it? We don't know. Cool. And so Alice is just going to talk about our first visit.
Hello. So I went to the first visit last week, so I thought I'd just give you a rundown of how that went. And you might maybe have some more questions on the specifics of how it actually went down. So I went to see the team that just finished Discovery and was starting an alpha. And we took one of our lead assessors to go and see the team. So we kind of had it as more of a meeting, conversational style. So we kind of discussed how the service fits in with the surrounding information, the program that it sits in. There was kind of, as you said, Ed, it was a bit of an introduction, so you can't expect to get 4 hours of information in a 1 hour meeting. But it was really productive for the team. They were very receptive to having more GDS involvement and were very keen for us to go away and bring back lots more experts. So the lead assessor identified, after kind of having a few conversations, that they might need a bit more user research specialism and that they might need someone to look at kind of the technical aspects of their project because they were just starting out and they seemed maybe like they could use that. So the plan is for the next visit, which will be 2 weeks after the first, to bring those experts so that we can kind of provide a bit more in-depth specialist advice rather than just kind of getting an overview. Yep.
Sorry, I want to keep being the one.
No, go for it.
So if you were going to provide like this kind of consultancy style expertise,
Mhm.
how would that work in terms of the onus put on the people delivering the product to resource in their spend control user researchers, for example, as part of their budget? Because you could have a situation where you have a small pool of people and pull them in multiple directions. Would there still be that requirement with one team to provide
So, well, in terms of user research, we'd expect a service team to be able to kind of resource that and have someone who can make sure the project is built on specific user needs. The advantage of doing it in a kind of, for us, assessing in a continuous assessment kind of way means we can identify where maybe they're struggling because of spending, or they're struggling because maybe they need more than one user research because it's a massive project. So we can kind of work with them to provide a lot more advice than they'd just be getting in a 4-hour assessment, to kind of prep them and spot the areas where they might be failing and kind of address those needs.
I think there's also a link back to the piece I was saying about more holistic engagement with the department. So rather than just looking purely from the spend control perspective, we, for example, with the Department of Health this morning, there's Hannah, who's the service lead for health, myself, looking at that. And if we, at the inception of a piece of work, we can start to give some advice as to what we would consider to be the right number of resources, how they would interplay with forthcoming assessments. So we kind of set the tone from the outset.
Yeah. It's only because I'm working in exec and I'm a subset manager. So
Yeah.
for me, learning how you want to play it is really good for understanding what could become
Mhm.
best practice internally. And we have an issue I'm presenting to project management. And then I said, how are you going to support me? Or how are you going to give me the skills necessary? So I would have to have a pool of like the researchers in the back office somewhere to come out at that point in time. It's very difficult to manage like internal capability for those random requests.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering how we're going to deal with that.
So from my perspective, I think it's by having those early conversations, it's finding what works with best practice, where there are common shortfalls, so it could be resources or a number of other things, but then to build that into a wider pool of knowledge. So maybe if we're going to make this a common approach, then maybe we do need to people, maybe we do need elements, but it's starting to surface those wants
Yeah.
and needs.
Yeah, so the plan for the kind of continuous assessment is we'll start it right at the start. We're not going to have the problem of a service comes out of the woodwork at beta and says, I need to go live next week, and we have to react to that. So we should be kind of interacting with these service teams from the very start so we can help identify all this kind of stuff.
Does a report still get written?
So, well, I try and can talk through how.
The lever when the department doesn't follow our recommendations.
Do you want to talk about how we're working
Yeah.
on stuff?
So at the moment, we're going with the spreadsheet, which should only take you a couple of minutes after the visit to fill out, and that is what we're thinking should be it. So as we discover more, as you would have heard from the workshop we had earlier, during workshops we do a lot of post-it notes, but at the end, some service teams still want to report. So it's some of the learnings that we will get out of our alpha, and then we can then kind of incorporate that and work out exactly what this alpha model will look like.
Do we still have like a lever you can't go forward?
Um,
Hours to don't agree.
Yes, so the money will run out, and this is why we spend a lot of time with the spend control, the tech advisors, and working with them and making sure that they are aware that the service team isn't going the way that they're supposed to, and there are issues that need to be addressed. And so when it comes to them passing their assessment or moving to the next stage, they're not going to be able to get there if spend controls don't think that they've done a great job, and they're not going to get more
It feels more than
money.
players. Right now it's
Yeah, it's not going to be a
It's not going past out for that.
yeah.
It's the thing actually now it's routing.
So there's two sides to the same coin here, I think.
Yeah.
Where something's working well and we're supportive and don't have concerns, then we're effectively saying you don't need to stop and then go through a control process to get the next tranche,
Which is great.
But if it's not good, we can pull a number of levers to actually stop it.
And we'll hope that because we're seeing the service teams a lot more regularly, we'll be able to know and pick up straight away when things aren't going the way we expect them to.
Yeah. Definitely.
I've done an assessment process
Mm.
advising teams.
Yeah.
And often they won't listen to you unless there's a far more of a stick that they can see coming along.
Yeah, well, this is all stuff we need to kind of factor in. So we've
Yeah.
only had one visit so far from the 12. The second one is happening now. I've got another one at the end of the week. So as we go through, it'll be quite useful to get kind of your opinion, obviously, and everyone else's and the assessors, and see kind of what everyone thinks and get all
Yeah.
that feedback. Once we can have kind of the reports together and the analysis, we can share that with you guys and see what everyone thinks.
One of the things that is in the model which we're not testing out in the alpha, is a escalation process or intervention, and that's something that we don't feel is right for us to test in the alpha, just because the scope is quite small. So when we get into private beta, these are the kind of things that we'll start testing out and seeing when intervention is required. If service teams don't do what we've asked them to do, they don't follow the recommendations, they're still, they basically, we give them advice and they just keep doing what they're doing. What do we do then? So that's some of the things that is a little bit later down the track.
Yeah. No, I do have another slide. Yeah, the second thing is, I'm sure as many of you are aware, some of your assessors, we've had a bit of a shortfall in assessors recently. So we're doing some kind of onboarding at the minute, which involves assessor training. So at the minute, the process is someone who's interested and wants to be an assessor fills out like an application form. They're checked with their heads of community in GDS at the minute. Then they kind of go through training, which starts on the 24th of November, and then there'll be another one 16th of December before Christmas. After that, they can observe 2 or more assessments if they want to get a bit more information and context around how we actually run GDS assessments. And we're hoping that will kind of help bolster our ranks a little bit in terms of service assessments. Yeah. Any questions not already covered? No. Cool. Is anyone after me, or are we?
No, that's it.
Oh, cool.
Thank you.